Hello and welcome to yet another tutorial in Maya. Today what we're going to do is something a little bit different. I want to show you basically a virtual interior and creating a virtual interior that you can composite in After Effects and Final Cut Pro and various programs like that, maybe Premiere. But what we have here is a virtual interior, and you're going to hear me talk a lot about concept and understanding concepts, and essentially this is what we're doing. I'm going to walk you through the process of creating your own virtual interior that lots of other things can happen. This is sort of a scene that I started with an idea, and that's where I talk about concept, is that the idea behind this was to create a virtual interior of, say, an art gallery, and sort of make this into a slideshow in this area. And as you can see here, I have just some basic elements. I have some brush, some strokes that are, I've got some alien grass right here, got some grass back here, got a little bit of text in here that follows a flow path, which I'll show you in a second, and basically a plane. So it's some really simple elements that you can sort of combine and create a something to composite against, as you will. Let's take a look at the scene, and I'll show you sort of where I started. I started with the idea of creating a virtual interior for a gallery, and I set my timeline for about 300 frames. And what I did is just sort of created a flow path for the text. You'll notice I have a tutorial on flow paths, and essentially I just assigned that flow path some text that rolls through there. I've got some grass back here that I've applied a little bit of turbulence to, and that's about it. Other than that, it's just some basic geometry, and you know, just a cool kind of scene to drop anything you want into back here. Now, let me show you something. With Maya, a lot of times what you'll have is you'll create a scene like what we've seen there, and anything in the background here, we're going to be able to composite something in the background. So that's really cool because it lets us add a whole bunch of other elements to the scene. And I'm going to move this aside for a sec. And let's take a look at the final scene that I have built from this. And this is just a QuickTime movie. I pardon if YouTube doesn't show this smoothly. I've added in some sound effects. And basically that's what we're going to be doing, is creating an environment that we can put other things in. I composited this in After Effects, and I did the transitions between this artwork, which is my own photography, and I've just sort of built a scene, a gallery scene with some, you know, some various movement in the background to give it a little bit more interest. I'm going to bring the sound down a little bit here, and as you can see, in this composite I have that basic geometry, and the one thing I paid attention to was I assigned this a texture, just a basic picture. It's just a JPEG of some wood grain, and I've sort of rotated these around to vary up the look of it, because I don't want repetitive repetitive stuff in the background in this wood. So I'll show you more about that in a minute. But as you can see, it's just sort of a gallery that can be used for a web banner, it can be used for a web page, and also what I can do with this scene is I can shoot somebody on green screen and composite them into this area. So if somebody were sitting just with a green screen back here, I could sort of shoot them on the green screen, drop the green screen out, and they'd be sitting on this little pedestal right here talking about maybe their artwork or something of that nature. So anyway, it's all about the concept, and there's lots of things that are going wrong in this scene so far. I noticed that I have a little bit too much turbulence applied. And this is basically just a test, a gallery test, and you know, essentially that's what you have to do, is sort of test things out first. But let's take a look at this scene over here, and let's come in here and see the elements. You can see where I have my flow path, I've got my paint strokes, and I'm going to switch over to a different camera. I set up a camera number 1 that just lets me kind of rove around the scene, and I'm going to show you the different elements and how they're put together. I wasn't too concerned about creating perfect geometry on the outside because I'm not really dealing with the outside of the scene, and so it's kind of sloppy. Nothing's perfect in there. But you can see where there's different elements are in here. I have the paint effect strokes. I've got some back here. If I zoom in a little bit there's my grass. Here's my flow path. Here's my lights. I do have quite a few lights set up in this scene, and they're basically the last thing that I do is set up lighting. I basically want it to kind of match the background or whatever else I'm compositing in there. So as you can see, it's fairly basic. I mean, these are just cubes right here for the walls, and this is a cube back here. That's a cube. That's a cube. And then I have a plane that I just assigned a texture to, which was a simple wood floor. And essentially that's it. So if I go back here to my perspective view, I'll get perspective. And that sort of locks my camera position in. I have a keyframe set, so I can always go back to this start of the scene. So anyway, you'll notice that, actually I should switch over here to my camera 1. You'll notice that I do have a space behind here on this side where something can enter the scene or come out of the scene, and it looks and appears as if they're on the inside of this interior. So yeah, you can get a basic idea of what this simple interior is, and really there's not much to it. I cover a lot of these other elements in some of the other tutorials, but this is sort of just a way to show you the concept, I guess. So you can build your own sort of building and do anything you want with it. Just have an idea before you start. It makes it much easier to come up with an end product. So anyway, that's where we're at there. I want to show you something in After Effects, because what you do with this in Maya, I output this as a IFF sequence at 300 frames, and basically just used a couple of the first pass I used with the text, and then I turned the text off in the visibility over here, and then recorded the same pass with of 300 frames of this background just without any text. So anyway, I'm going to show you what I did in After Effects with this scene. So let's just go down to After Effects, and in After Effects you can see where it looks a little complicated, like there's a whole bunch of stuff going on here, but really there's not. There's just a bunch of pictures that float in and out of these frames, and you can kind of see. I can't really show you this moving in full time in After Effects because it's computationally expensive, and it doesn't really, you have to render things out to make them look good. So anyway, that's essentially where we're at, and you can see where in the background right here I have some footage that I shot of just a street scene with some cars going by, and that essentially is composited in the background. And then this is just an image sequence that basically plays through. So anyway, it's fairly simple, and there's really not much to it. You just drop, it's like layers in Photoshop. I just put the clip of the cars moving by in the very background layer, and imported the image sequence of these paint effects in the Maya scene. So that's pretty much all there is to it. And then I basically took it back over into Final Cut, which is over here, and added a little bit of sound effects, the cars going by in the street and whatnot, and then just a little bit of bass or some music, and essentially that's what we end up with. So that's the concept, and what we're looking for here is the concept. But you can see where I've utilized 3 different programs to put this one piece together on a simple nature, and then I'll refine it from there because I know that there's things that aren't quite right, and I'll show you that here. Let's go back to Maya, and here's my scene, and let's see if I can find the movie. Here's our actual piece, and there you go. I don't know if YouTube's going to show this without having this be really jerky, but that's kind of the start of it. And you know, you can see where these plants back here are moving a little bit too fast. I'm going to correct that. And then I'm going to correct the perspective. I'm going to reshoot this street scene to be a little bit further back because the perspective doesn't quite match up. And that's one of the problems I'm dealing with. And then I also want to animate this paint effect stroke to kind of grow over time and maybe come back down. But you know, essentially this gave me a starting point to kind of experiment with a virtual interior and being able to, you know, use Maya sort of as a cross-platform tool to create graphics for, you know, all sorts of other stuff. So anyway, that's kind of what it's about. It's about the concept, having an idea of what you want to do before you even start creating something. So, you know, essentially that's what I've done here. I'm going to pause that. Let's go back here into the scene real quick and take one last look. It's nothing too complicated, and you'll find that the flow path, there's text along a flow path. I believe I have a tutorial on that. And then creating a couple of paint effect strokes. So yeah, I hope that helps in just sort of getting an idea about what you want to do with a scene. And that's usually the most important thing. It's the concept of just using what you need and then outputting that. And in this case, it was really basic, and it didn't take me too long to create. I think I spent more time on texturing, and that's about it. I'm going to show you the hypershade over here because I don't have that many surfaces that I've textured. I did the text over here with this blend, and it has a shader, and I'll show you that. Here's the ramp. I used a ramp for the text, and that kind of was, you know, I set the colors for something like this, and that gave us kind of that effect on the text. So then I have just a couple of other, you know, shaders here with some bumps applied. I believe I used a fractal for some of the textures. And you know, when you're working in Maya, it's not always going to look like what you are getting. You know, if I go here and let's say I were to render this portion, I'm going to get something that looks something like this, okay? But really the Maya viewport is only going to show you what it looks like here. If I switch on my lights, and if I switch to, say, high quality rendering and switch on my textures, that's sort of what I'm seeing, but this isn't really what you see, is not really what you get. You know, but you can see where adding a little bit of texture can help improve the scene. You can kind of see the bumps from that texture that I've created there, and that is it. But it's about the concept. It's about thinking what you want to do, what you're creating, and then going from there. And then compositing is another thing in After Effects which you really have to keep in mind, because After Effects is such a great program for working in conjunction with Maya. So there you have it. Pretty simple and really effective. You can use all sorts of things. If you don't want to use something in the background there, you could always create some paint effect strokes to create stars in the sky or something like that. But you know, essentially it's all about the concept. So, you know, pay attention to that and use your imagination and have an idea, and you know, just go wild. Maya is such an awesome program for that. And you know, I hope this has been helpful, and I will maybe do another tutorial on ramps, because this ramp node right here is awesome to use for creating you know, various effects on text and other surfaces. So that's it. So get busy, go create your own scene, your own virtual interior, and I hope you learned something. And as always, thanks for watching, and read a book. Learn something. Okay, see you for the next one.